It all happened around Dayton, the sixth largest city in the state of Ohio and the county seat of Montgomery County. A small part of the city extends into Greene County. The 2018 U.S. Census estimated put the city population at 140,640, while Greater Dayton was estimated to be at 803,416 residents. This makes Dayton the fourth largest metropolitan area in Ohio and 63rd in the United States. Dayton is within Ohio's Miami Valley region, just north of Greater Cincinnati. Ohio's borders are within 500 miles of roughly 60% of the country's population and manufacturing infrastructure, making the Dayton area a logistical centroid for manufacturers, suppliers, and shippers. Dayton also hosts significant researchers and development in fields like industrial, astronautical, and astronautical engineering that have led to many technological innovations. Much of this innovation is due to part to Wright-Patterson's Air Force Base and its place in the community. With the heavy decline of heavy manufacturing, Dayton's businesses have diversified into a service economy that includes insurance and legal sectors, as well as healthcare and government sectors. Along with defense and aerospace, healthcare accounts for much of what Dayton's area's economy is. Hospitals in the greater Dayton area have an estimated combined employment of nearly 32,000 and a yearly economic impact of $6.8 billion. It is estimated that Premier Health Partners, a hospital network, contributes more than $2 billion a year to the region through operating, employment, and capital expenditures. In 2011, Dayton was rated the number 3 city in the nation by Health Grades for excellence in healthcare. Dayton is also noted for its association with aviation. The city is home to the National Museum of the United States Air Force and is the birthplace of Orville Wright. Other well-known individuals born in the city include poet Paul Laurence Dunbar and entrepreneur John H. Patterson. Dayton is also known for its many patents, inventions, and inventors, most notably the Wright brothers' inventions of the powered flight. In 2007, Dayton was a part of the top 100 cities of America. In 2008, 2009, 2010, Site Section magazine ranked Dayton as number 1 middle-sized metropolitan area in the nation for economic development. Also in 2010, Dayton was named one of the best places in the United States for college graduates to find a job. On Memorial Day of 2019, Dayton was affected by a tornado outbreak, in which a total of 15 tornadoes touched down in the Dayton area. One was a half-mile wide EF4 that tore through the heart of the city, causing major property damage. We were going there to spend our summer vacation at our grandparents' house, knowing that Granddad used to be an animator back in the 1950s. While there, we chatted about certain things, like where he used to work at, how he had gotten this job, and about an event which unfolded back in the 1960s. Unlike Granddad's human personality, there was a guy named Joe Jones, and he was fanatical and rather mentally unstable, as well as somewhat psychotic and unhinged, almost to the point of worshipping the character Laszlo the cat as his savior and offering him human sacrifices to appease him in a method similar to various satanic rituals. Joe did not appear homicidal in his earlier recordings, but appears to have become maddened by unnatural corruption prior to Granddad returning to the workshop 30 years later after being put in the hospital due to a collision with a drunk driver. Joe seemed to have suffered from severe memory loss or dementia. He had been shown to suddenly forget what he was talking about mid-sentence, and is so amnesiac that he can no longer remember his significant other or even the color of his hair. The only thing he can almost remember is Granddad, as he felt familiar to him by looking at his face besides calling him a sheep. The place Granddad worked at was at Swan Animations, founded by Brian and Gregory Swan in an unknown full date other than the year of 1959. Swan Animations is located at an unknown location around the Ohio state, having work hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The corporation is known for being the place where an animator by the name of Kurt Laszlo spent his time animating long ago and used to work with his bosses, the Swan brothers, making Laszlo cartoons along with many other animators. In 1930, Kurt left the company and moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, to spend more time with his wife, Brenda. 1 year later, to keep their company strong and alive, the Swan brothers hired several workers and eventually voice talent to collaborate with Kurt. During World War II, the studio re-released many of its early cartoons to sell war bonds. When many of the Swan works were drafted into the United States Armed Forces to fight in the war itself, Brian became more open to hiring women to work for him in addition to men, since he was desperate for new hires. While Kevin attempted to make profit with the idea of making food products with Laszlo on them. In 1944, due to excessive spending on Swan's part in order to fund the then upcoming Laszlo Land project, the studio began to enter financial decline, ultimately resulting in the Swans enforcing stricter rules for employees in order to basically keep his company from going completely and utterly out of business. In 1956, Swan Animations was under investigation after reports of hazardous work environments, missing employees, harassment and excessive back pay, as well as the company's danger of being bankrupt, all of which were a result in the Swans' mismanagement of the studios. Anonymous employees threatened to make labor unions over the poor conditions, which included unpermitted buildings, hazardous electrical wiring, and a plumbing system prone to bursting. In addition, there was excessive work hours, most of which were unpaid, and several animators were unable to see their families in quite literally weeks. After being threatened with disciplinary action and termination if they were unable to finish animations on tight schedules, there were reports of barricaded offices, employees locked up in workspaces, and complaints of crazy malfunctioning machinery. Despite the evidence against the company, the brothers remained firm that the studio had done nothing wrong, calling the accusations preposterous and ridiculous, dismissing them as either complaint from menial employees or feeble attempts at competing studios to discredit the Swans. On August 16, 1959, the law firm known as the Black Wolf sued the Swan brothers, having heard the rumors of their mismanaging of their own workers. 12 days later, the studio was closed down in accordance to legal regulation 11 U.S. Code 1125, which forbids the misrepresentation of legally established companies, as evident by the bankruptcy report found in the brothers' apartment, as well as health and safety concerns directed by the mention of the Health and Safety Board meeting schedule found in the appointment lobby. 30 years later, in the present of 1963, at the beginning, my granddad received a letter from the Swans saying that he should come over to their workshop because they wanted to hire him since he was a really good artist down at his old studio, Regal Studios, to be more specific. Granddad revisited the studio, only to find it abandoned and worn due to its yearly defunct. Though thought it to be a legitimate studio, it is later revealed as an endless cycle, which every single area and establishment locations, i.e. Toys R Us, Dent, and Laszlo Land warehouses, merged into one world, as revealed by the two brothers. It's possible, but how? And thus, Granddad had been working with them ever since. Oh, and as for the workers there, turns out they were still there, just doing their normal routines. And as crazy for old Joe Jones, it was revealed that he was the music conductor and writer for the soundtracks that Granddad still had to this day. The guy may have been a lunatic, but he does have some pretty damn good musical taste. As I listened to the soundtrack from a tape recorder Granddad had on his dresser in his office, I could safely say that whatever cartoon this is, in my opinion, like Felix the Cat and SpongeBob mixed in a blender, and since the cartoon reminded me of Bendy and the Ink Machine, which I don't have, it gave me that nostalgic feeling of warmth and joy whenever I look upon the happy-go-lucky cat's calm and carefree face. The character for Laszlo is a cat, like I said before, with his appearance entirely colored in black, apart from the lower sides of his face and upper chest, which is colored in a grayish-white. He wears shiny black shoes, a pair of gloves that closely resembles those of other cartoon characters like Mickey Mouse, each possessing 2 black buttons. He doesn't have a tail for some reason. Guess that's how they created him. His friends are as follows. A dog that's colored in the same manner, but with the country accent similar to Goofy. A male pig who's an opera singer. A white mouse, a beautiful female of the group who is basically Laszlo's love interest. And finally, a silverback gorilla who's the main antagonist of the show. He's like Bluto from those Popeye shorts. He's a brute who constantly causes nothing but trouble for our main protagonist. Now, Granddad does have some reels in his office, but only a couple. I'm not really sure what the remaining reels are, but they do look to be in fine condition. even though it has been years since Granddad first worked at the animation studio. According to the reels, Laszlo is a borderline troublemaker, but rather impatient and easily startled or timid, yet justifiably cheerful, fun-loving, and mischievous as his feline nature would imply. Laszlo often refuses to pay for anything he buys, as he tries to take his burger without paying in, quote, burger boy blues, unquote, and didn't pay roller coaster Ronald for his ride according to the latter's bio. According to Granddad, while Laszlo could be playful, he's not evil, and his jokes are never mean-spirited. Laszlo is also attention-seeking and easily distracted. He's not really somebody you would classify as hardworking or courageous in any way. I also mentioned to Granddad that there was a kid named Tommy Hartley that had just moved from our hometown of Williamsburg, Virginia, around 2015. However, he had been reported missing after he had just went with his older brother. Fred took his older brother Fred to a cookout. The last time he was seen was with Fred on their way to scare a bunch of kids they had known around the neighborhood at the Ohio Valley Coal Company, an old mining facility where people could collect coal with machinery and other tools. Granddad told me that it was all over the daily newspaper at the time, and his parents said that Tommy was diagnosed with ADHD and autism and Asperger's syndrome when he was about 3 years old at the time. If anyone out there doesn't know what Asperger's syndrome is, Asperger's syndrome, or just simply Asperger's, is a previously used diagnosis of the autism spectrum. In 2013, it became part of one of the umbrella diagnoses of autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5. Asperger's syndrome and other previously separated types of autism folded into the umbrella diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. In DSM-5, when you meet someone who has Asperger's syndrome, you might notice two things right off the bat. He's just as smart as other folks, but has more trouble with social skills. He also tends to have an obsessive focus on one topic or platform, and with same behaviors again and again. Doctors used to think of Asperger's as a separate condition, but in 2013, the newest edition of the standard book that mental health experts used, called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, changed how it had been classified. Today, Asperger's syndrome is technically no longer a diagnosis on its own. It's now part of a borderline category called Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD. The group of related mental health issues shares some symptoms. Even so, lots of people still use the term Asperger's. The condition is what doctors call high-functioning type of autism spectrum disorder. This means the symptoms are less severe than other kinds of autism spectrum disorders. The DSM-5 also includes a new diagnosis called social pragmatic communication disorder, which is some symptoms that overlap with Asperger's. Doctors use to describe people who have trouble talking and writing, but have a normal intelligence. They start early in life. If you're a mom and dad of a kid who has it, you may notice that he can't make eye contact. You may also find that your child seems awkward in social situations and doesn't know how to say or how to respond when someone talks to him. He may miss social cues that are obvious to other folks, like body language or the expressions on people's faces. For instance, he may not realize that when somebody crosses his arms and scowls, he's angry. Another sign is that your child may show few emotions. He may not smile when he's happy or laugh at a joke, or he may speak in a flat, robotic kind of way. Think about it for a second. If one of your siblings had this condition, he may talk about himself most of the time and zero in with a lot of intensity on a single subject, like rocks, football status, artwork, or things like that. And he might repeat himself a lot, especially on a topic that he's interested in. He might also do the same movements over and over. He also may very likely dislike change. For instance, he may eat the same food for breakfast every day or have trouble moving from one class to another during the school day. After a while, me and my brother Jason decided that to aid in the search party in an attempt to find Tommy. Even though Jason was planning on drawing anime characters in our room, he was urged on by our mother due to guilt tripping him into doing so. We got into our parents' car. Our parents let Jason drive the car after getting his driver's license, and we drove around looking for Tommy. After many hours of walking around outside calling Tommy's name, I had found something shining on the ground under the moonlight. I shined my flashlight on it, and it was revealed to be an unwrapped bag of Sour Patch Exploders, his favorite candy. I knew Tommy had been around here, but judging by the scenery, it looked like he couldn't find a trash can when he was done eating all of his candy, so he just threw it on the ground and continued to wander off. "Hey, Jason!" I called out. "Take a look at this!" He walked up to me and looked at the small bag. Damn, we might be getting close. Let's keep looking. We walked around the darkness around town till we found ourselves back on the road. We checked the nearby road sign, and what do you know, we were on DeVay Avenue. When we saw some lights in the distance, we walked towards it to see the sign, Ohio Valley Coal Company. The metal carts that had held coal were rusted and abandoned due to either the founder, Arnett, getting fired, or the spread of, well, the current virus going on. But either way, we were heading inside to continue our search for Tommy. We climbed up the fence and looked around the facility. The bulldozers and multiple metal cars on train tracks made their area absolutely haunting, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the music playing over the intercom. I can remember the song well, due to me watching old cartoons with Granddad while spending our summer vacation. It was a song On Our Way to Grampy's from Betty Boop. The fuck is that? Jason asked me, look on his face showing that he was a bit unnerved, but he quickly shook off the feeling. You know, he knew for a fact he was a college student and was honestly better in not allowing his fears to get the best of him. It's Betty Boop, I replied. Somebody must really love old-timey songs. Jason chuckled a bit. Yeah, who here doesn't? Can't say I blame him for saying that. Since we were a couple of city boys, we usually hear Heathens from 21 Pilots or My House from Flo Rida on the radio of gas stations on a nearby Walmart, but this was completely out of the ordinary. Both of us were expecting a halting troll of a man dressed as a clown popping out of nowhere and chasing us down with a chainsaw, but thankfully nothing like that happened. Just the ominous surroundings of the coal mine outside of the Betty Boop blasting from the speakers. We walked around the place, the soles of our shoes colliding with the rocky dirt ground, till we saw the entrance of the tunnels of the mine. What made it even more creepy was the black drawings around the gaping maw of the tunnel. Two pitch black eyes staring down at us below with teeth bared, looking as if the tunnel was about to swallow us whole. The two black arrows on both sides of the entrance interior pointed inside with words such as, "Come inside," and "I'm dying to see you." From what we were seeing, whoever made these writings and drawings was the person responsible for Tommy's disappearances. "Come on," I said. "We gotta get this kid back." Whoa, wait a minute here," Jason called out to me. "How do you know that he's in there? I mean, he could be somewhere else other than this hole. I mean, you know how people like him are pretty much afraid of, well, the dark, right?" "I know," I replied back, "but what if Tommy somehow managed to want to explore in there and got himself lost or something? I mean, we can't really risk that chance. We gotta go there, we gotta try and look for him, and fuck it, we gotta save the guy before he starves to death. I mean, think about it, he's probably at the point of eating rats to survive in there, dude." Jason pondered on the thought and rolled his eyes and groaned. Fine, but stay close to me, okay?" I nodded in agreement and we went inside, our flashlight shining around the walls of the tunnel. Just the looks of the mine alone could make anybody claustrophobic, but the darkness was just the icing on the cake. It was so dark, I couldn't even see my best friend behind me. I mean, I couldn't even see the side of my own hand. The pitch blackness of the shadow seemed to consume the light itself. The tunnels, though, dear God, it seemed to go on forever. Like, hell, you could go alone without the aid of a buddy. You'd pretty much be completely lost. Let's be honest here. You wouldn't see your way out, no matter how much you tried to get out, or how many times you screamed. Nothing. You wouldn't be able to find shit. And then you'd just be trapped there in the darkness of the cold, decrepit mine. The air would have been so dense that it probably would have squeezed your lungs to oblivion. It wasn't a fun place to make it, to be honest. The rays of our flashlights sliced through the shadows like samurai swords through paper as we ventured through the coal mine. And for what felt like days on end, we saw the walls were now covered top to bottom of countless black drawings of many things. And when I shined my flashlight towards them, I recognized them. They were drawings of stick figures of children playing, with one big anthropomorphic cat with big, bulging eyes and a wide, horrific smile. I looked back at Jason, who was seeing them too. I saw the look on his face. Pure, unadulterated shock. "What the fuck?" he mouthed quietly to himself. He noticed me looking at him, and I said quietly as well, "Dude, I think we..." Suddenly we heard a loud clang that echoed out in the lit walls of the tunnel, making us jump out of our skins. "Jesus!" I yelped. We paused, not moving a muscle. "Tommy?" Jason called out in the darkness. "Tom, are you in here?" Nothing. I called out as well. "Tommy, was that you making the noise?" Again, nothing. We looked at each other a bit before making our way down the mine, still looking at the creepy drawings on the walls. The rest was, in my eyes, ghastly in its own right. The cat in the drawings is seen luring children into abandoned places with the words, "Get out," written below it. Now there was a bunch of trees with the black silhouette of the cat dead center with the words, "Don't listen," above the drawing. And finally, the cat walking hand to hand with two kids with no words around it. Just a drawing and nothing else. God, this is like fucking Slender Man. I shuddered. Jason just looked and shook his head. This is nuts. This is where we finally saw the end of the deep, mind-bogglingly long tunnel, and we walked out of the tunnel as we looked around. The area was huge, like something out of a movie. The map found on the wall was all the information we needed. There was a storage room, a turbine room, 2 stairwells leading up to the second floor, and a main room where the mine's emergency elevator were located. We were in the main room. We ventured around the main room until Jason found the first generator next to the elevator. After activating the second generator, we realized that we were being chased by a feral creature. Well, what sounded like a feral creature in the distance. We could hear growls, grunts, and spitting reverberating off of the walls of the halls as we tried to avoid whatever was chasing us. As we ran up the stairs leading to the second floor, I saw what looked like a humanoid figure in a black hooded jacket, black sweatpants, and a Slipknot t-shirt. What made it all horrific was the fact that his hood was up. He wore a Felix the Cat mask as a machete was tightly gripped in his right fist. What made me even more petrified was that his skin was white as snow, possibly being in the mine for years. "Oh shit!" they yelled in fright. "Jason, run!" Jason saw what I was looking at, and he was hysterical. We darted down the halls, leaped over barrels, and hid in numerous places, but still, that masked maniac kept hunting us down like a wild animal. We soon got lost and found ourselves in the turbine room. This is where our spines turned jelly. In the corner of the room was black handwriting that said the following: "The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, a spirit of wisdom and of understanding, a spirit of counsel and of strength, a spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord, and that his delight will be in the fear of the Lord." Isaiah 11, chapter 1, verse 3. Our knees started buckling as we came to the shocking conclusion that this was Tommy's handwriting. My jaw was agape and my eyes were the size of pie pans. I fell to my knees and I knelt there for what felt like hours. I didn't know that it had been hours as I stared at the writing on the wall, because my legs fell asleep. My legs were completely numb as I attempted to stand up. I had the difficulty walking, so I limped towards the door of the turbine room and headed out to sit down in the hall and slap my legs back to consciousness. Thankfully, the masked lunatic was out of sight, and Jason, throughout the hours, was texting to our parents, telling them about what we had found and encountered. How we got Wi-Fi down there was a riddle I don't think anybody could solve. "Harry, we need to leave now," Jason said. After my legs were fully conscious, I got up and said, "Alright, let's get out of here." As we made our way out of the halls and back down the main room, we were more than ready to get the fuck out of this hellhole. That is until we were stopped dead in our tracks as the sound of the giggling and laughing of children rang in our ears. We didn't dare look back at first, until our eyes moved towards each other. What was that? Jason asked quietly. I didn't say anything. We both slowly moved our heads over to our shoulders to see. Moving from the darkness, groups of children ran up towards us, from 6 to 17 years of age. They came from every area of the mine. Hell, they were even scaling around the walls and ceiling like humanoid lizards. How the fuck were they able to do that? I have no clue. If you've seen the scene from The Willow, where the Sasquatch-looking trolls were crawling around the fortress walls towards the main character, it was like that, but with kids. All of them had the same white skin, and the masked man that chased us like an asylum escapee. And what baffled us was that some of the pale-skinned children were not just Caucasian, but were other races as well. And then we found out the reason for their complexion as we shined our flashlights on them, which made them flinch away and hiss like cats or snakes. We gasped at what we saw. They were colorless, monochrome, all existence of any form of skin, eye, or hair color, including their clothing, gone. The hissing didn't sound human either. It sounded otherworldly and almost demonic, in a sense. They backed away from our flashlight rays, covering their eyes and even attempting to swipe at us as an attempt to smack the flashlights out of our hands. Suddenly, the elevator began to grind and shift, causing us and the monochrome children off guard, and we looked at the elevator. Something indeed was coming down there, and the children immediately fled back into the darkness. Some of them were crawling back up over the walls of the mine. We gazed to the direction of the elevator as the creature on the lift was revealed. My God. That thing will forever haunt my very dreams as long as I live. It resembled a giant, black, anthropomorphic cat with an extremely large smile filled with gnarled teeth that were a rotten orange. Its hands covered in white gloves resembling a 30s cartoon character. Beside that thing was the same masked man, still holding that damn machete. The creature appeared to be about 8 feet tall. It towered both of us, the masked assailant. It stepped off, staring at us with that unnerved grin, and beckoned to us with one outstretched, gloved hand. We then looked at the masked man who walked up to us and took his mask off. Yes, he took it off. Tommy Hartley. Tommy Hartley, the same person we were looking for. That was his face underneath the mask. He looked horrific as fuck. He now looked like a simple, ravenous, indric monster instead of a normal, everyday human being like the rest of the kids. He was completely monochrome, but he had large black rings around his white eyes, with a strange liquid substance trickling down from his mouth. Speaking of which, his mouth was the worst. He had an extremely large mouth that was painfully stretched across his face like a cartoon. His mouth was filled with teeth that were filed into sharp points, resembling little tiny daggers all aligned like the blades of a chainsaw. He growled and gnashed them as he foamed at the mouth. Black saliva dripped from his gray lips as it hit the ground like wet ink. Hell no. Jason mumbled in fear as he made a break for the exit. I followed suit. Me and Jason ran down the tunnel with our footsteps echoing all over the walls. We heard the monster howling after us as we sped up the black tunnels towards the exit. I attempted to catch up to Jason, who was now like the Flash at this point. Every time I feel like the creature was gaining on me, I quickened my pace and could hear the clopping of my soles hitting the concrete floor. By then I could feel the night air in my face as me and Jason were close to the exit. And the next thing we knew, we were already outside. We sped to the chain fence. Clouds of dust streamed behind us as we were like two bullets out of a gun. Jason was climbing like crazy as I climbed. I looked back to see the now corrupt Tommy darting outside with the maniac expression of a rabid dog, with the giant creature behind him making its way out of the mine. It lowered its black feline head as one gloved hand held the other side of the entrance as it squeezed its way out. It also seemed hesitant to leave its territory, but either way, it chased us nonetheless. Harry, come on. I could hear Jason's frantic voice beckoning me to pick up the pace, and so I did, just like that as the creature came towards us like a juggernaut. I attempted to escape, but my foot was grabbed by Tommy, who was now trying to saw my leg off with the machete of his. I yelled in pain as my leg was being sliced like a piece of Thanksgiving turkey, and I used all my might to kick him in the fucking face. He fell back with a loud thud as I pulled myself over the chain fence and limped a few meters away from the damn place. I fell forward in agony and called out to Jason for help. I looked back and in my terror the beast was standing near the fence, its arms stretching and reaching for me like two giant rubber hoses going towards me. They grabbed at me and I grabbed at the grass, grabbing at anything to help me get away from its grasp. I cried out for Jason as much as I could, till I heard the sounds of the vehicle speeding my way from the shadows. I saw headlights flashing in my face as Jason sped his car to a stop, pointing his shotgun at the thing's arms and fired. The thing recoiled his arms and dropped me, roaring in pain as the bullet struck its left arm. Jason fired multiple rounds at the thing, causing it to retreat back into the mine. Harry, get in the car, he said. I can't, I replied. My leg! Jason looked and helped me back into the car as we sped to Miami Valley Hospital. I woke the next morning in my hospital bed and gown, provided me by the doctors and nurses. My injured leg was all bandaged up in a cast. Sitting there in the chairs near the windows was my parents. Mom, Dad, I muttered. We're right here for you, my mother said. How you doing, champ? Asked my father. Leg doing okay? Well, hurts like hell, but I'll be okay. Your brother told us there was some psycho attacking you guys, my mother said. Are you okay? Do you know anything? Yeah, and so is Jason, I replied. By the way, is he here? Yeah, I'm right here, bro, Jason said as he stepped in. He was coming back from some lunch from the cafeteria. By the way, got us some pizzas. Thanks, man, I said as both of us were eating pizzas and drinking the sodas. Well, he did. I just drank some ginger ale to kind of try and numb a little of the pain that I was going through. As our parents were talking to the doctor outside, Jason pulled up a chair beside me and asked, When are we going to tell him? We can't, I replied. They're not going to believe us. They're just going to have to find some sort of evidence to back up our claims. You mean, like, photos or videos? Jason asked. Yeah, I answered. I brought my video camera with me when we got there, but along with my charger, might as well use it to document our search for answers. Good deal, he replied. But you know when you came back they had prepared, right? I highly doubt that, I said. They'd probably be in another location after a confrontation somewhere underground. But we can't risk any more people going missing because of whatever the hell that thing was. Oh, God. That was fucking scary. Jason shuddered as the thought of what happened last night. I know, man, but we gotta do this or else not only they're not gonna believe us, but more people could be in a lot of danger. Jason sighed a bit as we both shook on it, agreeing to end this nightmare once and for all. As we got home 1 week later, we filmed each other in our grandparents' RV and chatted with the viewers about how the events had unfolded. Unfortunately, the whole shebang about Tommy and the monster that corrupted him and those poor, unsuspecting children. We spoke about what the creature looked like, and then I brought up the fact that due to it resembling Laszlo the cat, the character I mentioned in the beginning of this article, I had brought up a theory that it could have been a cosmic entity of some sort, manifesting itself as Laszlo the cow to lure innocent children to its lair, and suck out their souls and drain them of their color, so that they could be mindless followers, serving this entity as it tells them where they need to go, or who it tells them to kill. Just like in Marble Hornets, where Tim and that hooded guy became Slenderman's proxies, but that was the work of fiction, and this is reality. I hope to God that these two realities were not related in any way, although the possibility of it really doesn't seem that surprising to me, to be honest. I mean, think about it. This is beginning to fall into some fucking Stephen King territory here. Like, with that thing being Pennywise and the town of Dayton, Ohio being Derry Manual, but what me and my big brother saw that night, it was worse than what Pennywise or anything else could have thrown at us, I guess. We now revealed its motives to any viewer watching our video. It would not be active around the daytime, so let's just call it a henchman to do all the work. But around the nighttime, that was when it was most active, luring the children from their homes and tricking them into believing that it was their imaginary friend, until when the coast was clear, it revealed itself to them and take them to purgatory. There it would stalk them for all eternity, or simply kill them off. When it wants to be more manipulative, it will have its children follow him to its hellish abode. When they're inside, they're never heard from again. There are even accounts I had made where the creature's skins eat the children, leaving their skins to dry out from the boiling sun. We don't know where it came from or what its plans are, but we're not going to let some kid's coffin rest in our minds. Before we ended the video, I said it in memory of Tommy Hartley. Whatever this thing is, we're going to blow that son of a bitch back to the pits of hell, and by God, we are not going to rest until it's good and dead. And Mr. and Mrs. Hartley, if you're watching this, we're going to get your son back one way or another. You can rest assured that whatever's happening to your son is not going to happen with us. This is for you, Tommy. This is all for you, my dude. Talk about a very interesting story. I honestly wasn't too surprised over the fact that this was going to be a long one. I mean, any single one of Dark Cat stories is oftentimes going to be a pretty damn long one, regardless of what story you're going to get yourself into. But that was definitely something. I'll give it that. And, I will admit, despite certain parts of the story going on for a lot longer with a bunch of unnecessary detail being thrown in, I actually found the story to be pretty interesting. Now, before I get into this, a lot of you are probably a little bit confused as to what the hell this story was about. For those of you a little bit concerned or you don't know what the title means, basically Laszlo the cat is what's classified as cartoon cat. Specifically, I believe a art piece by, I think, Trevor. I don't know. I do know that it's Trevor, but I could be wrong. Anybody who wants to let me know, leave it down in the description box below. Comment section below. God, I can't think today. But this basically was like a different kind of storyline to the original Cartoon Cat. Now, Cartoon Cat was basically a painted creation that basically depicted a very morbid-looking anthropomorphic cat from the 1930s. Specifically, if you had Felix the Cat, but more freaky, demonic, and rubber hose animation. Kind of something that, Spinell from Steven Universe particularly has. That's pretty much what Cartoon Cat is. Basically that, but just a lot more disgusting and evil. Now, the story itself, getting back to that, I found the story to be interesting. Especially given the way that it kind of went out with the description of what the cat was and everything, and just the whole concept and idea of it being different from what the original story has. I mean, the original story of Cartoon Cat is that, this cat lures kids in somewhere and then brutally kills them. And basically playing a game of cat and mouse, which is exactly what it sounds like. Literally. But that's pretty much what Cartoon Cat is. A demonic entity in the form of a cartoony kitty cat that goes around basically killing people. That's pretty much what it is. It's not really too different from, say, Slender Man or anybody else for that matter, but you get what I'm trying to get at. And the story actually manages to take that concept itself, kind of push it aside and, really give it something more. Like, for example, like discussing, what exactly it does do. Like, for example, making the characters like proxies. Kind of like what Slenderman does, but a little bit different. Changing them up instead of actually outright killing them. And the usage of incorporating Tommy in the story as like one of the potential victims, and later revealing him to be the guy with the machete and everything, was, in my honest opinion, pretty good. I liked it. I definitely enjoyed that little part. However, with that said, I do have things with the story that I don't like. The main issue I really have with the story is the incorporation of a bunch of unnecessary amount of details. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know what the story was trying to do, and I know what the author was trying to do is sit there and kind of put a little bit more awareness and everything in it, like with Asperger's or things of that nature, which I don't have a problem with if it kind of tied up with the story, and it didn't. I mean, it just made a mention of Tommy himself, just kind of having that, and then just going into a bunch of unnecessary details that, let me be honest here, anybody can go and look up on freaking Google, Wikipedia, or whatever. Let's be honest here. And I mean, it's a problem because of the fact that, one, it doesn't tie anywhere into the story at all, and two, it takes up too much space. That space that honestly could have been used to describe Cartoon Cat a little bit more. Maybe going into a bit more detail about, what his character was like. Another issue as well that I have with the story is that it goes all over the place. Now, this wasn't like the whole diarrhea story I had narrated, I think, last week. It's not that level of it, but the story itself just doesn't exactly stay very consistent. I mean, it basically goes from, like, detailing a whole thing with the town, which, don't get me wrong, interesting, kind of like the idea of it, but wasn't really too crazy about the whole concept itself. Let's see, what else is there? And then it gets to the whole animation studio, not really talking about much, except a little bit about Cartoon Cat, although we really don't get much else from that, other than that. And then it kind of just continues on with, the protagonist and his friend going off trying to find Tommy and a bunch of other... It just goes into so many different directions and doesn't stay in one place. That is where the story itself really wind up going down a good bit, because it didn't stick with anything. It didn't stick with a specific subject. Now, I understand the whole concept of trying to sit there and tell a story, but again, it doesn't really do that. It just goes into one specific thing. I mean, look, if you're gonna make something like this, make sure that everything is tied in together or focus on one specific concept and then use it. Like, you could have entirely made the whole interview with the grandfather, something a lot more than just, the guy worked at animated, whatever. Something more about it could sit there and be used to make sure of it that, it kind of tied in with the Cartoon Cat thing. And, hell, you could have sat there and incorporated something along the lines of, I don't know, the original guy basically being crazy and basically summoning something which wind up taking the form of Cartoon Cat, or a deal with the devil, or like anything remotely like such that could kind of explain the origins of Cartoon Cat. Something that really goes into a lot more detail on how it affected the grandfather and how it affected everybody else who worked in that. That could have worked out a lot better as its own story. I mean, even the little storyline as well with the characters going out and trying to find Tommy, that in its own self could very likely have been its own story. Now, again, these are very good concepts. I mean, I really enjoyed the separate concepts, except for the fact that they were all blended in too much into the story. Any of these things could have been different parts in the story that would have worked a lot better had they just been their own separate story. I mean, there are ways you can sit there and connect all of these together into one specific storyline, but that's not what the story does, and that is a major problem. It is a very major problem. And another thing as well that I have to make a mention that I really don't like with the story is the ending. Way to sit there and just kind of leave it on a cliffhanger. look, I've made this very abundantly clear. I do not like cliffhangers in stories unless there's another part coming to it. I'm not going to explain a lot why, because I've made it clear in the last video I made. But with all due honesty, please don't do this. There's so much you could have put into that. It didn't have to just end it like right then and there, especially when we were getting to the really good part. It's like sitting there and like writing in the middle of an action sequence and just ending it right then and there. It's unnecessary. It's not only completely unnecessary, it completely tears the story down in a lot of ways. Alright. Still, I mean, so much of this story had so much potential. And parts of it were really good. I liked a good bit of the story, but it needs a lot more work. It really does. So now we're actually getting into the part of this video where I talk specifically about any potential theories or things of that nature. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't really have anything to really go for. I was originally going to sit there and kind of cut this part out, but given the fact that this is kind of how my new way of making videos is, I do want to kind of give a little bit of something. I mean, even if it's not much. And the potential theory that I am getting with this pasta is, hear me out, it's a mess, but it's the only thing I could really come up with. The only real theory I can honestly give is that basically, what basically wound up summoning Cartoon Cat in the story was the individual who pretty much wound up starting the whole thing up with Laszlo the cat. And it is mentioned in the original story that the person, like, did satanic rituals or whatever, which, to be 100% honest, was, like, a really big bruh moment kind of thing for me. I didn't really like that, but we've already gotten done with the review part, but at least it would explain how possibly Cartoon Cat could have gone out and, you know, went and did his thing or whatever it may seem to be. And so basically what wound up happening after all that situation happened, the place closed down and Cartoon Cat was basically wound up getting set free, either by the ritual itself or by the place closing down, because it is quite possible that a pact could have possibly been made with the devil regarding Cartoon Cat to either make him extremely popular or something along those lines, but again, it's kind of messy. I don't have a whole lot of evidence to really back up that claim, but it's the only vague thing I guess I could put together, perhaps? I mean, if you guys have any kind of potential links to it, let me know. And so basically what winds up happening after that is that when Cartoon Cat gets loose, he does all the crazy crap that's gone on. The interview kind of starts, which I'm going to completely cut out. And then, you know, that's when Tommy gets kidnapped. But that's the only thing I can really tie into it. That's all I can tie into any kind of potential theory that the whole situation with the animator doing what he did and everything ultimately was what formed Cartoon Cat, and hence the reason why Cartoon Cat is the way that he is, even though he isn't specifically mentioned, except as Laszlo. But that's all. That's like literally the only thing I could come up with. Again, like I've said, the story was a giant, you know, mishmash of like 3 different stories combined into one. Yeah, again, major problem. Okay, so with that quote-unquote theory out of the way, I'm finally just going to get to my final thoughts here, because there's nearly not much else to say. My final thoughts with this creepypasta is that, while I definitely did find certain parts of the story to be extremely enjoyable, I really do feel as though that this creepypasta could have been best dealt with in 3 separate parts. Specifically one with the animation studio, the origins of Cartoon Cat, or then again, those could be combined into one, but I think that would be a great storyline in of its own self. And then basically going into the whole storyline about Tommy and everything, about what went on, and basically connecting all these things together. Actually, no, scratch the second one. The second one could definitely be the interview with the grandfather. I really feel that if these things were done in their own separate stories, it definitely could have worked a lot more. Another thing as well that I personally would have done to help make the story a lot better was sit there and, besides making them into separate stories, not leaving the ending on that cliffhanger. Like, seriously, no. That still bugs me. I'm sorry. That still bugs me, though. I would have sat there and at least made sure of it that that ending didn't end the way that it did, or at the very least make another part of the story itself. That right there would have definitely improved a lot more in the story and really kept my interest. Unfortunately, though, it didn't exactly do too much of it. So my final rating of this story itself would have to be, in regards to storyline, I give it a 3 out of 10. It was relatively decent for what it was, but it really should have been separated into 3 separate stories. The concept itself was good for what it was, especially given the fact that it was a different, concept, I guess, for cartoon cats, so I give that one a 3 as well. In regards to the characters really weren't anything too interesting, in my opinion. I kind of felt that they were just kind of one-off characters that you wind up forgetting about, so I'm going to give that one a 1.5 out of 10. And as for grammar, 10 out of 10. Well, actually, scratch that. Funny. No, scratch that, actually. I give that like an 8 out of 10. There were actually a couple of places where punctuation marks should have been, that should have separated the sentence properly so that way it was easier to read, but that just was not the case for this story. There were a lot of periods in certain parts of the story where it shouldn't have been, where it should have been replaced with commas, which basically wound up making the story a lot harder to read, and in certain sentences, there weren't any proper punctuation marks in a few of them, which basically made it a full run-on sentence to a degree. That needs to be greatly improved, and I'm encouraging you, Dark Cat, to do a good re-editing on that one. So, in regards to the grammar, I give it an 8 out of 10, because they are minor, but they are still there, and they need to be improved. As for the overall story itself, I give it a 3.5 out of 10. It needs a lot more work. It needs a little bit more oomph to be put into it. It needs to be separated into 3 different stories, that way everything makes a lot more sense. But we also need to make sure of it as well that the actual storyline itself ties in with each one of them, so that way they're not 3 separate stories, but 3 stories themselves connected with one another. That way everything makes a lot more sense. A little bit of extra detail would definitely be nice in regards to, the cartoon cat origins. Another thing as well that definitely could be worked on a lot more is the, obviously the, no more inclusion of a bunch of random, unnecessary, whatever that was in the story being thrown in. I mean, it's not necessary. So basically cut those parts out entirely. But with that said, like I say with these videos, and like what I always will continue to say, these is simply my own personal opinion. And of course, if you disagree with it, that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions in regards to creepypastas like these, and this is simply my own personal thoughts. I don't do these things to sit there and try and harp on anybody, but to only sit there and make sure of it that they improve themselves to the best of their ability. To Dark Cat himself, I really do enjoy a lot of your stories. I really think that you are really good at what you do, but this one was a little bit of a flop. Not too much of a flop due to the interesting concepts, but not great either. It is recommended that you really try and sit there and improve a little bit more with the storyline and take the advice that I have to give. But again, take it with a grain of salt. What do you guys think about this creepypasta? Do you guys enjoy this story? Do you think I'm honestly being a bit too harsh? Do you think that the story is fine? Do you think that there's a lot more that needs to be improved? Were there anything that I didn't mention in this review, or anything like that needed to be made a mention of? Let me know in the comments section below. I'd really like to hear your own feedback and criticisms as well, as any little bit of criticism definitely helps any of the writers of these stories and myself to improve a lot more on our own writing and video making as well. Anyway, I want to thank you guys again for watching today's episode. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're brand new here to this channel. And if for some reason you found any kind of issues with this video, please let me know. I'm always open, and I will make sure of it to heart your comment as well. But again, thanks again for watching. I'll be seeing you all in the next video, and like always, roll the outro because I'm out. In fear and surprise, You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horror-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.